Hi, welcome to my channel. I'm Kyla for those of you that are new here. Today we're going to be talking about MLMs and cults and how they are pretty much the same thing almost. So before we get into it, don't forget to hit that subscribe so you can see more of my videos going forward. As well, I will have linked down below my Instagram and my blog if you want to check those out. And I also will have linked below my Like to Know It, which is where I post all of my outfits and just products I use, things like that. If you ever want to know where something's from, you can find it there. And then as well, it is a really great way to support me and my channel if you want to. Obviously, no pressure at all to do that. But I do make a small commission off of any sales through there, even if it's not something that I linked. So if you want to support me and you also get something that you probably would have been buying anyways, you can do that. Again, no pressure to. I just have it linked down there as well. And I just wanted to mention what that is in case you see the link and you're like, what the hell is that? I also want to say if you catch me looking down or over to the side during this video, I do have a bunch of notes on my computer just to make sure I include everything and say everything properly. So I apologize if that is distracting or annoying, but I just can't remember everything, especially in a video as detailed as this, and I want to make sure I say everything correctly. And as well, all of my sources will be linked down below too, just because this is a more research heavy topic. So I do have quite a number of sources that I use to get information for this video. With all that being said, we can go ahead and get into it. So I first want to start out by talking about how MLMs and cults are similar to begin with before we get into the tactics they use. So the definition for cult pretty much doesn't really mean a whole lot these days. But when talking about MLMs and cults, we're going to be looking more into the psychological practices that both use and draw comparisons between those. Just because the word cult is used, I feel so much now, it's almost a bit of a buzzword. Just because these days really anything can be called a cult, or people will say something has a cult following. For example, a movie that has a cult following or things like that. So looking at the definition of a cult doesn't really do us a lot of good in this situation, but we'll get into how MLMs and cults, traditional cults, are similar. So I'm sure if you've watched any of my videos in the past, or really any anti-MLM videos, you know that MLMs are really only profitable for the top 1% of people in the MLMs, or people who sign up upon the company being created. So they're really the first people that are in these MLMs and no one else is in it already. No one else really knows what it is. And that the best, or really the only way to make money in an MLM is to be able to recruit as many people as possible to join under you, creating a downline of people that are continually recruiting more and more people. So while an MLM isn't the same as, say, a religious cult exactly, they do use a lot of the same practices, and MLMs you could look at more of as a sales cult. So they encourage people who fall victim to the MLM to recruit more people as victims of the MLM. They turn every relationship that you have into an opportunity to get people to join, whether it's your friends or your family. Every single relationship you have with someone is looked at as another possibility for you to rope someone in and get them signed up underneath of you. And members of MLMs, much like cults, are definitely encouraged to bring in as many friends and family as they can. In fact, all of their friends, all of their family, coworkers at their day job, they're encouraged to bring all of them in. And we see this in MLMs a lot as well, where oftentimes when you first sign up for an MLM, before you really even recruited anyone, your upline is telling you to, make your mom an account, make your boyfriend an account, make your dad an account, your brother, your sister, whoever you can, even if you're the one running the account, which technically isn't allowed, but they will advise you to do that just so that you can get in a few extra people right away. So I know for me, when I first signed up for Beachbody, and I've talked about this before in my previous videos, but it was suggested to us that in order for us to hit Emerald, which is you and 2 people under you, that you should sign up your boyfriend or your mom, pay for their starter pack, run their account just to get you there. And just before we get into the tactics that MLMs and cults use to recruit people, I just want to look at a couple of ways in general that MLMs and cults are similar. The first bit of information that I have here comes from a website called LeCount Consulting. I apologize if I pronounced that wrong, but of course it will be linked down below. And here are the ways that they compare multi-level marketing to cults. So they have 11 different ways. I'm going to read them. I've paraphrased obviously some of it, and I'm going to add my own commentary or examples into it. But this is kind of the main ways. So they promise utopia. Cult leaders will assure you of a spiritual nirvana with endless riches and other rewards. Similarly, multi-level marketing companies make ridiculous, unsustained promises such as easy money, free travel, work from home, provide for your family, natural products that can cure any ailment, and to live an abundant and wealthy life. A lot of the time we hear the word financial freedom thrown around, which honestly, I feel like at this point means nothing to anyone because everyone says that. That's like, as soon as you hear that, you know you're being pitched something. But that's the first way. So they're promising you a better life, or kind of like the grass is greener on the other side type of thing. So they're saying if you're over here doing what we're doing, everything will be better. The second way is that they're led by a guru. So every cult has a top person or group of people who are adored and treated like a demigod. Everything that person does is viewed as divinely inspired. They can do no wrong. The founders and CEOs of MLM companies are viewed in a similar way. Their words are repeated and memorized. Everything they say or do is deemed worthy of imitation, and nearly every MLM company uses celebrity endorsements to add even more credibility. So this is a big one we see as well, where MLM CEOs will say something, even if it's completely not backed by any research, it's not backed by any statistics. Like they'll say that their company creates more millionaires than any other company in the world. And the people in the MLMs will just repeat that. We see it all the time where they're just repeating and regurgitating this unfounded information. And we also see a lot of the time celebrities being paid to endorse MLMs, where they obviously are just being paid directly to support an MLM. They aren't signing up. Some of them are, but a lot of them aren't signing up to sell, but rather they're being paid to endorse the company so that other people see this person that they look up to saying that this is a good company, and it definitely does give it more credibility. They think, okay, well, it's obviously not a scam if this person who's so famous, has so many followers, is promoting it. They wouldn't be promoting a scam, so I guess it's legit. So we see that a lot in MLMs as well. And the third way is that they promise secrets to success. If you follow these steps alone that I can share with you, you will see immediate and incredible benefits. Similarly, MLM supporters are told all you have to do is follow A, B, and C and you'll be rich, famous, independent. That promise of success is one-sided, however. The onus rests on the follower to do exactly what is prescribed. When someone fails to succeed, which ultimately is going to happen because it's the norm, not the exception, blame is placed solely on the person, not on the flawed business model. So, of course, we see this all the time as well through the videos that I react to on my channel, and I'm sure on other people's channels as well, where people will say, oh, it's really easy to do, it just takes time, but you have to just recruit as many people as you can and you can do it. You have to, listen to your upline, you have to do all the steps, you have to post it every day on your story, etc. And you will be successful, when ultimately that's obviously not the case, because there are plenty of people who do all the steps correctly and still don't succeed, and ultimately they are the failure, not that the business model is the failure. Number 4 is that they tell you to reject the haters. MLMs often encourage their sales reps to reject anyone, even friends or family, who try to dissuade them. Anyone who expresses concern is deemed a negative person. Anyone who criticizes you is labeled as a hater who is jealous of your success. Devil's advocates are viewed as a threat to predatory groups because they reveal the truth about what is really going on. This is exactly the same MO used by cults. Scientology, for example, says that anyone who criticizes or questions them is a suppressive person. So we see this all the time. You're always told that anyone who doesn't support you is like a negative person. They're bringing you down. They don't want to see you succeed. They're jealous, when really none of that is the case. And just like this said, devil's advocates, so people who are just bringing up logical information and saying, well, what about this? Why aren't you addressing this? They're just seen as the enemy because they are speaking truth on the matter. But the only way for the MLM to counteract those truths is just to say, oh, well, you're just being a hater. They don't actually denounce the points that the person is making. Instead, they just label them as a negative person and hope that everyone else follows suit. The 5th way is that the structure is confusing. So both cults and MLMs are predatory. Their goal is to keep people moving up the endless ladder to success, which never seems to end. So they design a long list of award titles, promotion levels to lure new converts into staying committed for as long as possible. So some examples of this are Amway has 23 pin levels: silver, gold, ruby, pearl, sapphire, etc. It goes up. It Works has double diamond, triple diamond, presidential diamond. Avon has executive leader, silver executive leader, gold executive leader. We've seen this with Arbonne as well, where they have regional manager, regional manager, area manager, etc. And even Beachbody with their emerald, 1-star diamond, 2-star diamond, and so on. So to support their pyramid business structure, multi-level marketing companies use the argument that all corporations have a pyramid shape as well. Now, the issue with that is that, well, yes, they do technically have a pyramid structure in the sense that there is typically a CEO on the top. there's different levels of management filtering down, and typically the largest section of any company is going to be just regular employees. So if you look at a retail store, for example, they might have, say in one store, 50 sales associates working, but only a few managers. And then if you go even higher than that, that area might have one district manager, and then there's one CEO of the company. So technically, when you look at those levels, the largest portion is the bottom. So MLMs will try to use that by saying, oh, well, any company has a pyramid structure. But the main difference with any regular company that has that same structure versus an MLM or even a cult is that in a regular business structure, employees are promoted based on performance, not based on roping more people into the company. So if you work at just, again, a retail store, I'll just use that example because it's relevant to my work experience. If you work at a retail store, you aren't promoted to a supervisor role because you hired on more people under you. You are hired, or you are promoted to a supervisor role if you maybe meet like sales quotas, or if you have really great leadership skills, or you're showing them that you deserve that by having peak performance in whatever way that they decide to grade that performance on. For the majority of MLM partners though, moving up the ladder requires them to purchase large amount of product, whether it is for stock to sell or just personal value, and they also have to just recruit as many people as possible in order to move up the ranks. Now the sixth way is that they use predatory tactics to recruit. I'm not really going to touch on that because we're going to get much more in depth on that one. And number 7 is that they use fear and shame as a means to control. If you try to leave an MLM, you lose the support of your friends in the MLM. Like cults, multi-level marketing companies operate under a closed group mentality, where you're either with us or you're against us. When the pressure builds and you decide to sell back inventory or stop purchasing more, you are likely to be shunned. MLMs often use passive-aggressive techniques to shame, slander, or discredit any members who try to leave in an effort to bring them back. They employ fear tactics by threatening to take away things of value from the member. So a lot of the time with MLMs, we will see this happening as well, where as soon as you leave, your group of friends that you had are no longer your friends anymore. That's definitely relevant to my MLM experience, which was short-lived, and I didn't expect to be super close with them afterwards. But when I told my upline that I wasn't really enjoying it and that I would be leaving, I didn't get an answer, and I was blocked and deleted from the Facebook groups, and that was it. No one messaged me, no one talked to me, no one asked how I was, and my upline didn't even have the decency to respond saying that like, oh, thanks, I understand, like, sorry, it didn't work out, nothing. Number 8 is that they expect constant positivity. So members of an MLM are told that they need to constantly use positive self-talk, and that they are encouraged to believe, trust, and have faith, even if the bills are piling up and they aren't making any money.
Oftentimes we'll go see someone's feed, we'll come to something like this, and that voice in the back of our head, the one that's been there since we were like 12, you know the one. I like to call her Pam. That negative self-talk will start to play in your head on the loop, and you'll hear ideas from some of the other coaches, and you'll hear ideas from me, and the voice in the back of your head is already telling you all the reasons why that's never going to be yours. Anyone know what I'm talking about? Oh, only 6 of us? Everyone else is perfect? Thank you. So what I'm going to ask you to do is go all in the time that we have together and consider the possibility. Consider that if you did these things, if you tried these things, they might work. So it's backstage and
So MLMs also encourage their members to employ a sunk cost fallacy. This happens when a victim is so committed to seeing results that they feel compelled to continue spending money, time, and effort even when it's obvious the investment isn't going to pay off. And we see this obviously again with MLMs, where first of all, you typically have to buy a starter pack. Some of them you have to buy stock every month, or large stockpiles of products right off the bat. Every time there's a new launch, you're expected to buy it. You're expected to be using and buying the products all the time yourself, just to be able to show them on your Instagram story or whatever. And realistically, you're never going to get any of the money, time, or energy that you put into it back. The 9th way that cults and MLMs are similar is that they announce moral superiority. So much like we see in cults, MLMs often partner with charitable organizations or social justice groups in order to show some type of moral superiority. And the 10th way is that their allegiance causes a sudden personality change. So once you join a cult or MLM, you are strongly encouraged to do things that may not fit your normal pattern of behavior. They are told to incessantly promote and talk about the company, using the products and showing them every day, talking about them in every conversation, posting on social media content about them, and becoming absorbed into self-help books, etc. We often also see MLMers mirroring the same kind of language, so calling their group their tribe, saying that they're a girl boss. Like, they use all this type of language that does mirror typically their upline and what the MLM puts out. Oftentimes these aren't things that they would say or believe in beforehand, and now all of a sudden they do. And the 11th way that cults and MLMs are similar is that they demand absolute 100% devotion. So the only way to succeed in a cult or an MLM is by committing 100% to the organization. There's no room for half-heartedness. MLM advocates are told they must defend the company no matter what, even when confronted with the facts like how much debt they have accrued or how miserable their life has become. A true believer will refuse to acknowledge that anything is wrong, and when leaders of a cult or MLM are accused of unethical, illegal, or immoral activity, they place tremendous pressure on members to doubt the validity of those claims and prove their loyalty by maintaining undying allegiance. So again, this is something we saw most recently, I would say. I mentioned it in my video about Monate and like the kind of, I guess, legal information that was put out about that, where a person in Monate had actually posted in one of their Facebook groups, and it was like shared out of the group, saying that the assurance of voluntary compliance was just noise. That's what they kept describing it as, the noise. And I talked a lot about that in my other video, so I will link that down below if you didn't see it. But that's a huge example of this, where, I mean, it wasn't technically illegal activity, but they were basically just completely denouncing it, making it seem like no big deal, like, oh, no one should think anything of this, brush it under the rug, forget about it, it doesn't matter. And we also see that all the time in Monate with the lawsuits and hair loss claims, where people in Monate will just completely be like, oh, I don't believe that that's from our product, you're lying, it's BS. So the next thing I want to talk about is indoctrination. So there are very common steps that MLMers and cults alike will use to indoctrinate new members into the group. So indoctrination is defined as the process of teaching a person or a group to accept a set of beliefs uncritically. So these are the steps that cults use to indoctrinate new members. So the first step of being indoctrinated into a cult is an invitation to a seemingly non-threatening event. So this could be a workshop, a party, a poetry reading, or some other seemingly innocent event that you would never really associate with a cult or with anything malicious. It just seems like an innocent invitation to something fun. You tag along, and at the event, the cult members will shower you with love and with attention and praise for showing up. They will be over the moon excited. They'll be praising you, that they're so proud of you for turning up to the event, that it's a huge step that you're there. So what they're doing with that is they're trying to create a positive association in your mind between attending the event and having a good feeling. So they're showering you with all this affection and praise in order to, in your mind, create a positive memory of the event that you've been at. So that way, when you're invited to the next event, you are more likely to say yes because you had such a good time at the previous one. Now, at some point, the cult members will suggest that if you join or study with them, you can attain something special. So this is kind of like dangling the prize in front of you. You could receive anything such as happiness, the answers to life's biggest questions, the answers to the world mysteries, or fantastic wealth and financial freedom. This offer could come before, during, or after that initial event you were invited to, but it'll be there because they need you to want something from them. Otherwise, they don't have any leverage over you. At the event, all the members will seem extremely happy, and you will likely be even told some success stories from people who had their lives completely changed from before. So you might hear a sob story about how their life was awful before, and ever since they've joined this group, everything's been completely turned around. After they introduce this prize that could potentially become yours if only you follow them wholeheartedly, they get you to agree that you want it. Now, this is a key step in psychological control, I would say, and psychological manipulation, because what they want you to do is they want you to confirm that you want it. So if they're saying, oh, you know, you can be financially free, or you'll get the answer to all of life's mysteries, or you will have this huge group of people who just want to see you happy and successful, and we can promise you all the happiness in the world and all of the success if you just say you want it, and you're like, well, yeah, I do want that, Then later on, when they try to pull you in closer with the group, they'll say, oh, well, remember you told us you wanted this, you told us you wanted that. And in your mind, what that does is it makes it seem like it was your idea to join. So really, this whole time, they're giving you the information. They're showing you the success stories. They're telling you what could be yours if only you sign up. But they want you to feel like it was your idea and that you're doing it out of your own free will. And this is a manipulation tactic, absolutely. And that's why for them, it's important to get the yes out of you, that you want that. Because ultimately, if you feel like you're being forced to do something, obviously you're going to be less likely to do it. Whereas if you feel like it was your own idea, or you feel like you're doing it because you want this thing that they can offer you, you're more likely to join because you feel like it's out of your own accord. Oftentimes, the way that they will phrase these questions are ways that make it seem less obvious to you, as if you're not actually agreeing to anything yet. So they might say like, you do want to be financially free, don't you? Or wouldn't it be exciting to really know the secrets of the meaning of life? In which case you're probably going to answer, well, yes, it would be, or yes, I do want that. The next step that they will take to get you involved in a cult is shutting down your dissent by threatening to withhold the prize. So at this point, the sell becomes a little harder. You'll be encouraged to do things that you might rather not, like devote more time or money into the group, to start recruiting for them, to pay for expensive programs or study materials, or adopt more extreme beliefs. Naturally, you might protest, but the cultists are ready for that. When you show any resistance, they simply threaten you that you'll never attain the prize if you keep up with that attitude. Threatening to withhold the prize isn't the only way the leaders shoot down objections, though. Notice that they use another one in the transcript above. They say that anyone who questions the teaching is simply trying to feel superior. On the website that I got this information from, they did give us an example of an actress named Sarah Fazeli. I apologize again if I pronounce it wrong. It's not a name I'm familiar with. But she relates how the landmark leaders threatened her with not getting the prize when she raised an objection. Early on, she tried to get her money back, and the landmark rep came back with, let's talk about this. Why do you feel this way? What could you be resisting in your life? What if I want my money back is just a story you're telling yourself? Sarah then talked to another rep who said, Sarah, can you honestly say that where you are is where you want to be in your life? And that's exactly out of the playbook. He followed up with, what is really going on here? What are you resisting? Resisting, trying to feel superior, whatever it is. It's just a way to turn around a criticism of the questioner. And then back to threatening non-attainment of the prize. I hear you, Sarah, but I want you to be open to the possibilities that lay ahead from you. But maybe the most direct example of holding back the prize was at the seminar that Sarah attended, when a leader chastised attendees for taking unauthorized bathroom breaks. You get up and take a break? Don't blame me if come Sunday everyone else gets it and you don't. I can't guarantee the transformation that will happen Sunday at 5 p.m. unless you are here and present every second. Moving on from that, the next way that they rope you in and get you indoctrinated into the cult is the establishment of guilt. The recruit is in the door and is no longer asking the difficult questions, because when they do, they are shut down and told that they're not going to attain the thing that they've been promised. The next step is to make the recruit feel guilty. Yale professor Robert Lifton calls this shaming the establishment of guilt in the landmark book about brainwashing of prisoners of war. The prisoners had so successfully been made to feel guilty that they came to blame themselves for their own incarceration. Cult leaders shame their recruits because that makes the recruits feel vulnerable and more susceptible to further manipulation. It is also used to guilt trip recruits into getting more involved with the group. As well, behavior is reinforced by rewarding good behavior and punishing bad behavior. Since we naturally seek to minimize pain, this is a pretty powerful tool. An ex-member of Zendik explains clearly, I was a vegetarian, but I was pressured to eat meat by Zendik, health administrator, and others in the community. I resisted for maybe a year, and when I finally did eat some meat, chicken I think, I received so much praise. Other Zendiks took notice and gave me approving looks as I walked past with my plate of dead bird or whatever it was. Vegetarianism was just another corrupting remnant of my old life. Like my Led Zeppelin t-shirt and my name, something I need to let go of in order to achieve happiness and enlightenment. Of course, I felt better after eating the meat. I was smiled at for a change. So oftentimes in cults, exactly what this example is saying will happen, where anything you do that at all questions the beliefs of the group, you are either shunned completely. I've seen it where you're completely given the silent treatment for, say, a week or until however long it takes you to come around and decide that you are going to follow what they say to do. And as soon as you finally give in to that, you are praised and rewarded. And naturally, of course, our psychological response to being rewarded is to be happy and to continue doing that thing. Whereas our psychological response to being punished or made to feel embarrassed about something is to stop doing it. That explains how recruits start to get sucked in. Once a recruit is firmly in, more advanced techniques can be used to keep them in. And one of those ways is to make them completely disassociate from anything that connects them to their previous life before the group. Not all cults do this, but the ones that do certainly have a tighter rein on their members because they're completely getting you to throw away anything that connects you to your life before, and therefore you don't really have anywhere to go afterwards if you decide that the cult is wrong or it's not for you. So something that's really interesting about reading those to me was that I almost forgot while reading that article whether or not I was reading about MLMs or cults even to begin with. So that article isn't about MLMs at all. It's actually just about cults and indoctrination. And aside from the exact examples that they gave, I actually found myself forgetting whether or not I was reading about MLMs to begin with, just because the ways that they describe it are so similar to the ways that MLMs try to get people to sign up and try to get them hooked in. Even as far as the events that they talked about. So I never went to an event for my MLM just because I did sign up from my upline who doesn't even live near me. But a lot of them, I have heard so many horror stories, especially on Reddit, of people saying that someone came up to them in the gym and invited them to like a seminar. And that is the very beginning, just like with this. So the next thing that I'm going to talk about with MLMs and cult is what they use to keep you in the cult or the MLM. So I'm going to be looking at the bite model, which I know a lot of people have talked about that in videos similar to this, but I do feel like it's the most accurate, and it's also like one of the more widely known models when used looking at cults. So if you're unfamiliar with the bite model, we're going to obviously get into the details of it, but it was created by Stephen Hassan. I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong. And it is used to describe the specific methods that cults use to recruit and maintain control over people. The first part of the bite model is the B, of course, which is behavior control. This type of control is all about dictating who a person is and what they do. Behavior control can include restricting what types of food a person eats, what they wear, when they sleep, and who they are allowed to associate with. Financial exploitation, manipulation, or dependence is also often a key component of behavior control. Individualism is discouraged and groupthink is encouraged. The next step is the I, which is information control. To exert undue influence, cults will often withhold or distort information to make it more acceptable or simply flat out lie. Information control involves using deception, discouraging access to non-cult sources of information, encouraging spying on each other, and producing propaganda such as newsletters, YouTube videos, movies, and other media. The next part is the T, which is thought control. Cults will also seek to control how members think so that the group's doctrine is accepted as truth. Loaded language and cliches are used to stop critical thinking and reduce complex ideas to platitudes and buzzwords. Often, only positive thoughts are allowed, and constructive criticism or questions are immediately shut down. And the final part of the bite model is the E, which is emotional control. Members of cults experience extreme emotional highs and lows. They are showered with praise one moment and then made to feel guilty, fearful, and unworthy the next. They're told that any problems they experience are their own fault and never that of the leader or the group. The cult instills irrational fears about leaving or questioning the leader's authority. So let's unpack that and we will compare it to MLMs. So for the behavior control, now while MLMs aren't as directly forceful with how they control the distributors, they definitely do have control. I know when I was in Beachbody, there was a pressure to post your Shakeology every single day. You weren't supposed to post where it was from though. You were supposed to be very vague so that people would ask you about it more. And daily clips of doing your workouts, clips of just like your day-to-day life, showing you working your business or enjoying your life but attributing it to the business, as well as clips of doing personal development and sharing that through your social media channels. That was a huge part of it. They always said that you're being a product of the product. And the part where they say that individualism is discouraged, to me, that makes me think of how MLMs want you to do like the team calls, mirror their language, recruit how they taught you to, and throw around phrases like be your own boss, boss babe, your tribe, hun, stuff like that. It is very much based on you just regurgitating what you're told to say, as opposed to thinking for yourself or making it your own, even though you're supposed to be the CEO of your own business. You really aren't, because everything that you do is modeled after the way the MLM wants it to come across. The most obvious one is the financial exploitation. When to join an MLM, there is a financial component to that as well. You're typically required to spend money every month on your own personal volume or on your stock that you are selling. So that's a big one, is the financial dependence. As well, you're also typically required to pay out for things like the trips and the conferences. They restrict leisure, entertainment, and vacation time. Now, this is also key in MLMs, just because a lot of the time the MLM reps will talk about how lucky they are to work on their vacation, or how even during their vacation while they're sat at the beach, they are cold messaging people, which honestly to me is not something to brag about. The next example is major time spent with group indoctrination and rituals, or self-indoctrination, including the internet. So with this, we see it a lot with the group team calls every week, meetings, videos from uplines, things like that. And then the self-indoctrination would be more so like the self-help that they require you to do every day. The next one is information control. This one is huge in MLMs. So MLMs don't tell you the name of the company, and they're super vague until you're ready to join. I remember when I signed up for Beachbody, that was a huge thing, which I have mentioned before, where when I saw the initial post, which was a sponsored post from my upline, it didn't say what the company was at all. It was super, super vague. And I don't even think I had a link or the name of the company until like at least my third or even fourth correspondence through email with who became my upline. And as well, it turned out to be intentional, so I didn't really understand why that was happening at first. After I joined and was in some like training calls and stuff like that and messaging, I learned that the reason being for that is that they don't want you to mention what you're using or what company it is, because people will look it up and either get bad information, or that they will look it up and if they want to sign up, they will just do it on their own without going through you. So it's definitely a way to control the information that people get. They don't tell you until you're already in it and spent the money, just because they don't want you to see like the bad reviews, the negative things that people have to say. Typically within cults, we'll see extensive use of cult generated information or propaganda, including newsletters, magazines, journals, audio tapes, YouTube, movies, and other media. And always when you sign up or are thinking about it, they send you videos that they made. Now that is very akin to my experience. So with MLMs, I've had tons of people, not even just my upline, who also added us into a Facebook group to view videos from her and two other people who were higher up on the team about their stories. But also I've had people reach out to me and send me like YouTube videos or just random videos of like their upline and stuff like that, trying to recruit me. And it is all stuff that they made. It's never information from like a third party or an unbiased source. It's always just stuff that comes directly from them. Even like with Beachbody, for me, like they would send out Beachbody newsletters, but it was never like outside information. They never would send us like unbiased reviews of products or anything like that. It was always from within the MLM. For the example, or for the T in the bite model, the thought control, this is where we cue in the toxic positivity. So pressure to ignore the voice in your head and to just jump in, don't be negative. Negativity is the enemy. Any rational thought you have of, is this legit, is shut down, and don't be negative. Trust the process. Just let go. You're not working hard enough. You're not being positive enough. Things like that are thrown around constantly to get you to doubt yourself, but not to doubt the business model itself. Oftentimes in cults, they will require members to internalize the group's doctrine as truth. Don't question it or you're negative. That is the exact same with MLMs. If you question it or if you say anything that's at all remotely not the most positive about the MLM, you definitely are just deemed a negative person, or that you are inhibiting your own success by doing that. You're not opening the path to success for yourself. And the other aspect of the emotional control, an example we see in cults and in MLMs, is that basically they shame you or your family if they're not supportive, saying that, you know, your family is deficient and they don't support you enough, they aren't buying from you, so they don't really care about you, planting all these negative thoughts in your head about your own family members and friends, or that your past is the problem, that you were so unhappy, you were stuck, you didn't spend enough time with your kids when you worked a regular job, things like that. And also the last part of that is the shunning of people who leave, and the fact that there's never what they would consider an appropriate reason to leave. So it doesn't matter why someone leaves an MLM, they will always be thought of as the bad guy to the people who are still in the MLM, and that is very similar with cults. There's no good reason in their eyes for why you would leave. There's a few other tactics that aren't a part of the bite model, but definitely relate in terms of like the psychology used that MLMs use to rope people in and get them to stay. The first one that MLMs use is love bombing. So usually the recruit is made by someone familiar, like a family member or a friend, or maybe they connect with an old friend from high school, or even someone message you a couple times on Instagram and kind of connect with you and you feel like you know them at least a little bit. MLM uplines usually encourage their downline to inbox people, reply to stories, etc., so that when they reach out, they don't feel like a stranger. Now that was a part of my training as well in an MLM, where we were told to, just reply to people's random stories that they post, just so that way when you do slide in the DM for a recruit, it doesn't seem totally off the base, like they actually feel like they've interacted with you a couple of times. I do have a video which I will play here now about a girl talking about just like how she comments on posts and how she loves on people and stuff like that.
To, like 3 to 5 of them, and then I usually comment on like 1 or 2. But I think the difference maker and where people get stuck, they'll do like the comments and then like, oh, your kid's so cute. That doesn't gain you traction in terms of like communicating and starting conversation, right? So I like to go and find a picture where I can ask a question and then start the conversation there, especially if you haven't talked to them in a long time or you haven't ever talked to them, right? So, oh my gosh, like, my son's the same age, like, where did you get that? Like, he would love it. Or like, where did you go on vacation? Or like, where are you? Something like that where they're going to come back and answer you. But love bombing is truly, it's just going and liking some of the photos on their page and then asking a few questions so you can start a conversation there, which you then can move into private message, and you're not just a creeper who shows up in their messenger like, hey, girling them. I'm going to 100 people that I was going to try to like love bomb connect with. Meaning I'd go to their Facebook page for 3 days. I'd like love on stuff and ask questions. And then those people got moved to my invite list. And then I'd go and send them a private message. Oh my gosh, whatever it was on their page that I was talking about. So it wasn't just like that cold message. And then after that conversation, maybe 1 to 2 days, then I'd say something like, hey, I'm sure you've seen that I started my own online health and fitness business. I run it with, back then I would say like for busy entrepreneurs, and now, or say for busy women. For now I say like, I run accountability groups, or really I say mom community groups. So I run these mom community groups where we focus on health and fitness, but we all like just support one another in mom life. Would you want more information? So that was my like hour to hour and a half. It would be adding to network, love bombing, inviting, and then following up and like clearing my inbox.
Okay, so obviously from that one, as you can hear, she herself calls it love bombing as well, and she's recognizing fully that that's what she's doing. She said it herself, so this is not me misconstruing anything. She absolutely just said it. When you look up love bombing, every single thing that comes up is all about how it is a manipulation tactic, how it is narcissistic, that it's an attempt to influence a person by just demonstrating this affection and kind of earning that trust. And she even mentioned it herself, that she doesn't just say like, oh, I love your coat or whatever. She's asking questions and trying to get them to connect back with her so that she can build that trust and that small bit of a relationship, so that when she does jump in the DM to invite them, it's not totally random. So love bombing is a form of toxic manipulative affection. Once they get you to a meeting or recruiting Facebook group or Zoom call, the whole purpose is to keep you there and feeling positive. Much like we talked about at the very beginning of this video, they shower you with positive messages, talking you up, saying how amazing it is that you're there, and they make you feel special and celebrated. They make you feel like you've uncovered a precious secret that no one else knows about and it is exclusive. Love bombing is definitely a big tactic that we see a lot in MLMs. It's a big part of cult tactics as well. It's all about making the person feel good and making them feel like they want to be there just long enough so that they can really rope you in and keep you there and pin you down. The next thing that a lot of MLMers and cults alike will use is their like rags to riches story about how the MLM or the cult completely changed their life, and try to connect it with a sore spot for the participant so that they feel like this thing is the result that they needed, or that this thing is gonna solve all of their problems, when realistically it can't. So this is also taken from the Huffington Post on an article which is linked down below, but it says the meeting starts when someone high up in the company inevitably gives their rags to riches story. They explain how bad things were before, how they were trapped by debt and a dead-end job, but by selling products for the company, they've changed their lives. Meeting attendees are encouraged to pursue the same happy ending. This is exactly like my Beachbody experience. I was put into a group on Facebook where there were 3 videos on 3 different days of people giving their like sob story about how their corporate job was just completely draining, how their anxiety going to their job was terrible, and how bad their life was, how they were drowning in debt and suffering, and that basically the business just completely turned things around. And this is something we do see a lot, like MLMers saying how they were super depressed. I mean, I remember like a Beachbody top coach in a different video of mine that I reacted to was saying how she was depressed and suicidal and didn't even know if she would be here if it weren't for the MLM. And while that might be true for her, sharing that can be extremely damaging and extremely harmful to someone in a similar position who now views the MLM as an end to that type of suffering, and they think it's going to cure their depression or cure whatever issues they are dealing with, when realistically that's just not the case. The next tactic that they use, which is also mentioned in this article, is the art of deception. So people who get up on stage to talk about the incredible income they earn and the luxurious lifestyles they live don't actually make money selling the product usually. So rather, the income is generated by a huge downline and is only available to a tiny fraction of the group. And the truth, and it says here, the truth is that you're never going to be that person on the stage. That person has a very intimate relationship with the officers of the company. In addition to the commissions that they're getting paid based off their downline, they're getting money from selling recruitment tools and systems, and they may also be getting additional compensation for the company for appearing at meetings and speaking. They'd get really irritated if people weren't participating, she said. It was all about empowerment and building the life you want, but if you didn't attend these groups, they'd sound kind of pissy. But Ruse didn't believe in the products and found the experience to be underwhelming. I put about $500 into it and got maybe 5 orders. 2 of them were my mom, she said. So she left after a few months. So the part of that example that stuck out to me was where she said that they'd get really upset if you weren't participating, and if you weren't attending the groups, they'd sound kind of pissy. They will make it seem like you have to attend these calls. If you miss one, you don't care enough, even though it's supposed to be your own business. So that sticks out to me a lot. I remember my upline would message in our Facebook group, like getting mad if people were like at work or couldn't attend the calls for whatever reason. And even though it is supposed to be your own business, you literally aren't in control at all of like your time or the expectations that are on you. So really, if you owned your own business, it would be up to you when the calls were, or if you even were on the calls at all. But in this case, it's very clear that it's not your own business because someone else is running the show for you. The last thing I want to include here is just a quote from Douglas M. Brooks, who's an attorney who was speaking through a lot of the article that I read, but this was something that really stuck out to me as well. So it says, "Are all MLMs cultist pyramid schemes? Maybe not, but the numbers overwhelmingly say there's no good reason to get involved with one and find out. The odds are just that bad," Brooks said, adding that you'd be better off trying to win the lottery where everybody at least has an even chance of winning. With MLM, it's like buying a ticket for the last week's lottery. And I love that. I think that's a good place to end off on because it's so true. Like, your chances of success are literally less than if you enter in the lottery because you're not signing up for an even chance with everyone else of succeeding in an MLM. Is there any way that MLMs and cults are different? Yeah, kind of, I would say, but not really. Like, you can say that it's different because cults don't necessarily sell products, but they still sell you on something. They're selling you on the idea of this like happiness, euphoria, this spiritual salvation, whatever it is they're selling you on, they are still ultimately selling you on something. And as we know from looking at MLMs, honestly, the main goal isn't to sell the product anyways, it is to sell you the lifestyle, which is an intangible thing. Do I think that all MLMs are cults? I mean, yes and no, but mostly yes. So when looking into everything we've just discussed, it's kind of like an undeniable truth that they're very similar to cults. But I would say that MLMs at least don't force you to live on a compound or drink the Kool-Aid to get to the afterlife together. So does that mean that I think that MLMs are perfectly safe and good to join, everything's all good with them? Absolutely not. I definitely don't think that, as I'm sure you already knew if you are aware of my channel at all. I do not believe in MLMs. I do not agree with MLMs. But I think that there are a lot of comparisons that can be drawn between MLMs and cults and very few differences. So with all that being said, those are kind of my thoughts on it. I hope you enjoyed this video. It's definitely a little more informational and a little bit less like reaction-y, which I'm sorry if that wasn't the most entertaining to watch. But let me know your thoughts on it down below, or if you think that MLMs and cults are similar, or if there's any points that you would like to add to this, definitely leave them in a comment down below. And once again, I will just say, go ahead and hit that subscribe so you can see more of my videos in the future, as well as check out my Instagram and blog that are linked down below. Thank you so much for watching. Leave this video a like if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.